Today, we're very glad to have with us Deputy Governor of the PBOC, Mr. Liu Guoqiang. And he will brief you on the financial statistics of the first half of 2023 and take your questions. Today, we are also glad to have with us spokesperson of PBOC and Director General of Statistics and Analysis Department, Ms. Ruan Jianhong, and Director General of Monetary Policy Department, Mr. Zhou Lan. Now, first, some opening remarks from Deputy Governor Liu. Friends from the media, good morning. This year, under the guidance of Xi Jinping's thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era, the PBOC has faithfully implemented decisions of the central leadership and the State Council. We stayed true to the general principle of pursuing progress while ensuring stability, worked for strong and targeted implementation of a prudent monetary policy, and stepped up counter-cyclical adjustment, thus helping the economy achieve continued and overall recovery. For the first half of this year, the increase of financial aggregates was comparatively high in Q1. It went down somewhat in April and May and went up again in June. The financial system was generally stable. Liquidity was reasonably sufficient. Credit structure continued to improve. Financing costs for the real economy steadily dropped, and the financial sector's support for the real economy was notably more sustainable. From the aggregate perspective, liquidity was reasonably sufficient, providing solid support for the real economy. In the first half, the PBOC cut the required reserve ratio by 25 base points to inject long-term liquidity, enhance stability and sustainability in the growth of total credit, and support the real economy. As of the end of June, M2 money supply, outstanding aggregate financing, and RMB loans increased by 11.3%, 9%, and 11.3% year-on-year, respectively. In the first half, aggregate financing increased by 21.55 trillion yuan, which is 475.4 billion yuan more year-on-year. RMB loans increased by 15.73 trillion yuan, which is 2.02 trillion yuan more year-on-year. From the structural perspective, the credit structure continued to improve, giving more impetus to economic development. This year, the PBOC fully leveraged both the aggregate and the structural functions of monetary policy tools and ensured reasonable and flexible application of the structural tools with a focus on key areas. We continue to employ the tools of inclusive loans to macro and small businesses and lending support for ensuring delivery of pre-sold housing units, stepped up support for key areas and weak links of the economy such as inclusive financing, science and tech innovation, green development, and infrastructure. As of the end of June, outstanding medium to long-term loans of the manufacturing sector went up by 40.3% year-on-year, 29 percentage points higher than average growth of loans. Outstanding medium to long-term loans in infrastructure grew by 15.8% year-on-year, 4.5 percentage points higher than the average. Outstanding loans to SMEs with specialized, distinct, and innovative technologies went up by 20.4%, 9.1 percentage points higher than the average. Outstanding inclusive loans to micro and small businesses grew by 26.1%, 14.8 percentage points higher than the average. Total recipients of inclusive loans to micro and small businesses reached 59.35 million entities. That's nearly 60 million entities, up by 13.3% year-on-year. In the first half, total personal housing loans went up by 516.4 billion yuan year-on-year. From the interest rate perspective, financing costs for the real economy dropped steadily. In the first half, the PBOC continued to improve the market-based interest rate formation and transmission mechanism, optimized the central bank policy rate system, and harnessed the reform function and guiding role of the loan prime rate, LPR. The 1-year LPR and the 5-year LPR both dropped by 10 base points steadily lowering the costs of financing for businesses and households. In the first half, weighted average interest rate of newly issued corporate loans was 3.96%, 25 basis points lower than year-on-year. Weighted average interest rate of newly issued housing loans was 4.18%, 107 basis points lower year-on-year. Going forward, the PBOC will continue to implement a prudent monetary policy in a targeted and strong measure, ensure sound countercyclical adjustments, and fully leverage the efficiency of monetary and credit policies to further improve recovery of the economy and unleash internal dynamism of the economy to help improve social expectations and promote sound circulations of the economy. Thank you, Deputy Governor Liu. Now the floor is open to questions. Please identify your media affiliation before raising your question. From Asahi Shimbun of Japan, that this year China's economy continued to recover, but some experts pointed out that the growth rate is slower than expected. So how does the PBOC view the speed of recovery in the second half, and will you introduce new measures in financial areas? Thank you very much for your question. And now we see about the slowing down of some macroeconomic indicators. There are a lot of discussions among the public. We do not shy away from these issues. At the same time, we believe that when we assess the macroeconomy, we have to adopt an overall and systematic approach. We see many highlights in recovery of the overall economy. Macroeconomic performance is showing some recovery momentum. For example, investment in infrastructure continued to provide strong support. In the first 6 months, investment in major projects increased by 15.8%. And over 70% of the funding allocated to support major infrastructure projects were distributed in June. In construction sector, PMI remained above 55%. The second, consumption continued to recover. In June, the interest rate for personal housing loans was 4.1%, and we had 3.09 trillion yuan of consumption in the first 6 months, more than 400 billion more year-on-year. And in the first half, big-ticket consumption also recovered. Since July, we have seen a notable increase in passenger flow in railway and aviation, which is double-digit growth compared to the same period in 2019. The outstanding inclusive loans to micro and small businesses also increased notably. As we see weakening global recovery and negative growth of global trade, many countries are facing slowing down and reduction in their export. But China, in RMB terms, achieved positive growth of goods exports. And some private brands of China, homegrown brands, grew by more than 11%. So the fundamentals for long-term growth of China has remained unchanged. So we have to remain confident for high-quality development of China. The challenges we face are normal in a post-COVID recovery process. It takes time to fully regain strength. China has just achieved a smooth transition to COVID control for around half a year. So we have seen some positive changes in economic circulation, income of households, and consumption. China's potential for development remains strong, and market expectations have remained generally stable. These have helped us effectively respond to external changes. From the long-term perspective, our economy remains on the track of high-quality development. The driving force from tech innovation, green transition have continued to unleash. Consumption market is recovering and gaining speed. The factors for high-quality development have been building up. And also, against the backdrop of high inflation around the world, China's prices have remained generally stable. This year, China's CPI saw some decrease, but China is not in a period of contraction. We believe in July, CPI might continue to drop, but that's mainly attributable to time lag in recovery of demand and base figure of last year. This is a temporary phenomenon in recovery of the economic circulation. China's M2 monetary supply continued to maintain rapid growth. This is different from what we see in typical cases of contraction. So China is not in a period of contraction, and we do not see risk of contraction in the future. As our policies continue to deliver outcomes, we will continue to see a smaller shortfall between supply and demand. And we believe after August, CPI will have a moderate rebound. So I think there will be a U-shape curve for the CPI in the whole year. I believe CPI will be expected to reach 1%. We will continue to adopt policies to enhance effective demand and implement a prudent monetary policy in a targeted and reasonable manner. We still have ample policy room and tool reserve to respond to challenges beyond expectation. We will strengthen countercyclical adjustments to provide a sound monetary and financing environment for the real economy. We will continue to promote stability and lowering cost for financing for the real economy, and will focus on the key areas in our structural tools. We'll continue to strengthen financial support in inclusive loans to private, small, and micro businesses and for green innovation. We have already identified extension of the 16 articles, financing articles for real estate market. So we have to, these policies are yielding fruits, so we have to be patient and confident. Thank you. Next question. The cover. How do you see the credit issuance in the first half year? Which areas are the main targets for credit issuing? What are the new changes that going forward?
Thank you for the question. In the first half of 2023, loans by financial institutions grew 15.73 trillion yuan. That's 2.02 trillion more year on year. It shows greater support for the real economy from the financial system. Enterprises and public institutions are the main contributor to this growth. In the first half of the year, their loans grew 12.81 trillion yuan, up 1.42 trillion year-on-year, accounting for 81.5% of the total. Household loans grew 2.8 trillion, up 572 billion yuan year-on-year. The main reason for this growth is the increase in personal business loans and consumer loans for the short term. Business loans grew 2.3 trillion yuan, 759 billion yuan more year-on-year, while consumer loans grew 301 billion yuan, 402 billion yuan more year-on-year. In terms of sector, the new loans are mainly for manufacturing and infrastructure. Real estate sector has also seen growing loans. It's showing recovery. The structure of loans continue to improve. To be specific, loans for the medium to long term for manufacturing continue to grow at a high rate. At the end of June, it grew 40.3% year-on-year. That's 10.7 percentage points higher than last year. And it is 22.3 percentage points more than for the whole industry. In the first half of the year, it grew 2.15 trillion yuan. That's 822 billion yuan more year-on-year. Advanced technologies, that's 41.3% higher year-on-year, or 11.5 percentage points higher. In the first half, it grew 484 billion. That's 185 billion yuan more year-on-year. Turning to infrastructure, the medium to long-term loans also grew rapidly. At the end of June, we have seen a 15.8% increase year-on-year. That's 3.3 percentage points higher than last year. In the first half, it grew 3.25 trillion yuan, up 1.1 trillion yuan year-on-year. For real estate, loans have increased steadily, and the speed of growth has increased steadily as well. At the end of June, the rate grew 7.1%. That's 0.2 and 8.5 percentage points higher than last month and the same period last year, respectively. The growth rate has been rising for 11 consecutive months. In the first half of the year, it grew 629 billion yuan. That's 459 billion more than year-on-year. Going forward, our bank will continue to leverage the role of monetary policy tools in terms of the aggregate and the structure. We will continue to sustain the reasonable growth and the smooth pace of loans and give our support to the key areas and weak links in the national economy to contribute to its smooth running.
Good morning, Market News International. Recently, many banks have cut deposit rates again. What is the impact of the reduction in deposit rates on households' fixed time deposits and their medium and long-term loans? And what is the future trend of these two items? Thank you.
好，请翻译一下问题。
美国国际市场新闻社。近期多家银行再次下调存款利率，请问这对住户定期存款及中长期贷款有何影响？谢谢。
谢谢您的提问。
Thank you for your question.
2022年4月，人民银
In
行
April 2022,
利率自律组
our
织
bank
利率自律机制建立了存款利率市场化调整
guided the
机制，
establishment of an interest rate
引导各银
self-discipline
行参
mechanism,
考市场利率
and
变
then
化
the
情况，
market-based
合理调
adjustment
整
of interest
存
rate.
款利率水平。
In so doing, the
在这一机
banks
制的引导
can
下，
have
2022 年
reference
9
to
月
the market-based
至
interest rates and
2023年
adjust
4
their
月，
deposit
银行进
interest
行了
rates.
第一轮自主调
And
整
so up
存款
till
利率。
April 2023, the banks conducted the first round of self-adjusted deposit interest rates. In the past couple of months, market interest rates continued to decrease, while the cost of loans for banks continued to grow because of the fixed-term and long-term deposits. This led to narrowing interest rate spread. Under such circumstances, the state-owned commercial banks and joint stock commercial banks, in light of the changes in supply and demand in the market and the interest rates, as well as their own business operations, took the initiative of lowering some of the interest rates for fixed-term deposits. This shows the important role of the market-based interest rate adjustment mechanism, as well as the higher level of market orientation in interest rates. In June this year, the weighted average interest rates for fixed-term and non-fixed-term deposits were 2.22% and 0.23% respectively, down 0.12 and 0.09 percentage points year-on-year, respectively. This has created favorable conditions for stabilizing the cost of loans and for the banks and for reducing the interest rates for the businesses. And banks of different sorts have also adjusted their deposit interest rates in an orderly manner, with deposits growing and distribution more reasonable, contributing to an orderly situation. Going forward, the PBOC will continue to deepen market-oriented interest rate reform and guide the mechanisms in contributing to orderly competition in the market, stabilizing the cost of loans, and providing support for the real economy. In addition, we encourage commercial banks to, through treasury bonds, local government bonds, etc., provide interest rates, their interest rate to the customers so that due consideration can be given to liquidity as well as security. Thank you.
好，请大家继续提问。那中间第3排。
好，谢谢。中央广播电视总台央视记者提问。
With CCTV. On June 30th, the PBOC decided to provide an additional 200 billion yuan to small and micro businesses in terms of re-loan and rediscounting, providing greater support to agriculture and to private sector small businesses. What have you done this year, and what are the effects in this area? Thank you for your question. This year, implementing the guiding principles of the 20th CPC National Congress and the Central Economic Work Conference, we have taken it as our priority to support small and micro businesses and the development of the private sector, producing fruitful results. First, we have adopted various policy support tools to support the development of these companies. We have stepped up re-lending support. As you mentioned, on June 30th, we added an additional 200 billion. We have continued to make good use of the inclusive loans supporting tools. We have provided accumulatively 40 billion yuan to local financial institutions, and added 2.2 trillion yuan for inclusive loans to small and micro businesses. Recently, we decided to extend the support policy tools from the end of June this year to the end of 2024 and have continued to improve the structure of the tools in order to continue to incentivize banks to provide financing support for small and micro businesses. Second, we have carried out projects to boost the financial service capacity for medium and small businesses. We have worked to develop sound long-term mechanisms to encourage loans for them. The preferential policies for the nationwide commercial banks in their service for small and micro businesses is no less than 50 basis points, and the weight of of inclusive finance in the performance evaluation of the banks is no less than 10%. Third, we have diversified the channels for financing to provide facilitation. From January to June this year, 28,000 loans worth 863 billion have been provided to small and medium enterprises. We have made good use of the supply chain build platform and promoted expansion of the support tools for inclusive finance. Since November last year, we have provided cumulatively 28 billion yuan worth of bonds for private businesses. And this year, special purpose financial bonds worth 124 billion have been issued by commercial banks. Through joint efforts from various sides, we have achieved financing for small and medium enterprises of greater scale and larger, covering more areas at lower costs. By the end of May, the outstanding balance of the loans reached 26.4 trillion yuan, up 25.9%. 57.5 million recipients have benefited. And the weighted average interest rate in May for the newly released loans stood at 4.57%, which is a historic low. Going forward, we will continue to provide great support for the small, medium, and private businesses. On the one hand, we will continue to make good use of the support tools to boost loans by financial institutions for these companies. On the other hand, we will continue to implement projects to boost the financial service capacity. Government departments will be deployed with greater synergy to strengthen the mechanisms for information sharing, financing, etc., in order to boost the sustainability of services for these businesses.
那中间第二排，右边这位，这外国记者。是的。
谢谢主持人。CNBC 记者提问：房地产开发商
For CNBC, how is the demand of real estate developers' loans, especially after the extension of the 16 financial regulations for real estate sector? I'll take your question. I think we know that many real estate developers have been operating under high leverage, high debt, and high turnover for a very long period of time, and they have operated with reckless investment. We, according to our knowledge, over 70% of their debt are prepayments by the buyers, and 30% of the debt are from financial banks. The outstanding personal housing loans is around 40 trillion yuan, and most of the loans are made for personal living of the housing. And for personal loans, for personal loans that are made to pre-sold homes, we are working on ensuring the benefits and interests of those buyers because they face some risks. The outstanding loans to basic living housing development, the amount is around 6 trillion yuan, and the risk in this part is low. Since the second half of 2021, the financial regulators have worked with relevant departments to strengthen support for delivery of pre-sold housing units. Well, first of all, we strengthened support for financial support for ensuring delivery of pre-sold homes. We had 2 batches of special lending with a total amount of 350 billion yuan. We guided policy banks to provide targeted lending and set up a 200 billion lending scheme to ensure delivery of pre-sold housing units. And the China Bond Insurance Corporation, under our policy framework, provided insurance support for nearly 26 billion yuan of bonds issued by private housing corporates. We have already formulated an opinion, a document on promoting development of rental housing. And its policies, some of the policies have been implemented in cities like Jinan and Zhengzhou, and with a total of 100 billion lending support for rental housing. So these policies and loans need some time to take effect. So the PBOC and the National Administration of Financial Regulation have issued a notice to extend the 16 financial regulations on real estate sector to the end of December 2024. These are aimed to strengthen financial support for ensuring delivery of pre-sold housing units. And the 200 billion lending scheme will be extended to the end of May 2024. Going forward, we will continue to implement the principle of ensuring housing is for living, not for speculation, so that the basic needs of our people and the delivery of pre-sold housing units can be guaranteed. We will continue our work to steadily resolve the risks in the housing market in a market-based way to ensure a smooth transition of the real estate market. We will cooperate with relevant departments to strengthen research of policy, to make our policy implementation more targeted, to promote the healthy development of our real estate market. Thank you. Next question. Thank you. Southern Metropolis Weekly. Recently, the PBOC released statistics of the aggregate financing in the first half of this year. Could you share with us the features of these statistics?
Thank you for the question. Outstanding aggregate financing at the end of June stood at 365.45 trillion yuan, up 9% year-on-year, 0.5 percentage points lower than the end of last month. In the first half of the year, aggregate financing grew 21.55 trillion yuan, 475 billion yuan more than the same period last year. In terms of structure, RMB loans for the real economy increased. In the first half of the year, it grew 15.6 trillion yuan, up 1.99 trillion yuan year-on-year. Second, off-balance sheet financing showed recovery, while trust loans and undiscounted bank acceptances increased significantly. In the first half of the year, off-balance sheet financing grew 182 billion yuan, 740 billion yuan, a billion more year-on-year. Trust loans and undiscounted bank acceptances grew 23 billion and 85 billion, respectively, up 398 billion and 262 billion, respectively, year-on-year. Second, net financing of government bonds decreased. In the first half, the figure stood at 3.38 trillion, That's 1.27 trillion less year-on-year. Central government bonds stood at 931 billion. That's 304 billion more year-on-year, while local government bonds 2.45 trillion, 1.58 trillion less year-on-year. Fourth, direct financing for corporations decreased quite a lot, which is mainly due to the year-on-year decrease of net financing of corporate bonds. In the first half, net financing of corporate bonds stood at 1.17 trillion yuan, a decrease of 788 billion year-on-year. That said, we have noticed a marginal improvement in June. In June, the net financing for corporate bonds stood at 222 billion. That's 13 billion less year-on-year. So the decrease in growth narrowed. And net financing, stock financing for companies in China stood at 70 billion. That's 11 billion more year-on-year. Thank you.
I have two questions. What's your outlook on the currency? We've seen stronger than expected yuan fixing since late June. Has China reintroduced the counter-cyclical factor again? And is the PBOC going to use other tools like cutting the FX RRR to prevent wild swings in the currency? Secondly, will you take more steps to address the ongoing weakness in the property market? If yes, what specific steps? And will this focus on city-level policies or broader macro-level policies? And just quickly, Deputy Governor Liu, you just said that it's common wisdom the economy will now take 1 year to recover from the pandemic, and we're only half a year in. That seems a lot more pessimistic than how the government was talking about the economy in March at the MPC or in months since then. Is it the common wisdom at the PBOC that recovery will take another 6 months? Thank you.
好，请翻译一下问题。
我的问题是美国彭博新闻社的提问。请问央行如何展望人民币的汇率走势？6月末以来，中间价开始显著强于市场模型的预测。请问中国是否重新引入了中间价逆周期因子？请问央行还会采取如下调外汇存款准备金利率这些工具来稳定人民币汇率吗？同时，我也想问一个关于房地产市场的问题：央行是否会采取更多措施来解决房地产行业面临的问题？如果是的话，具体会采取哪些措施？是在地方城市层面采取措施，还是更加广泛的宏观政策层面的措施？那同时，关于刘行长，您刚才提到，一般来说，在疫后复苏可能要花1年的这个时间，而现在我们只经历了半年的时间，似乎您的这个看法比3月以来中国两会之后的一些表态更加的悲观。您是否认为整个的复苏的过程还需要半年的时间？
好，谢谢提问啊。
Thank you for your question. First, I will respond to your question on exchange rate, and with regard to your last question.
它有这么一个过程，但是不同国家也不一样。从中国的情况来看，就疫情恢复啊，相对还是比较好。
For China,
但是
post-pandemic recovery will take some time. Of course, there will take some time for adaptation. So it is normal to have some fluctuations in some economic indicators, but overall, the trend is going upwards. I'm very confident. So I think the economic indicators have spoken for me. Then about exchange rate, in recent days, we have seen some fluctuations in RMB exchange rate. So people closely follow the changes in exchange rate and its future trajectory. Of course, in the past, we stressed many times that exchange rates are indeterminable. You cannot try to manipulate it, because that would be only counterproductive for you and for other people. So from a long-term perspective, RMB exchange rate will be determined by fundamentals of the economy. In the short term, it is indeterminable. If we look at both short-term and long-term, China is a big and open economy, so our exchange rate is affected by many factors. It could go up and could go down. But in either direction, it would not go to extremes. I think in the past years, since 2019, there were several times when the RMB to US dollar exchange rate increased above 7. In the past 3 months, it went above 7 again. It's the fourth time since 2019. But you could see in the previous days that RMB to US dollar exchange rate appreciated notably. China is both a big exporter and importer. So it would be counterproductive for China to have an overly high exchange rate or overly low exchange rate. In recent years, our managed floating exchange rate regime, which is underpinned by market supply and demand and adjusts against a basket of currencies, has functioned well. We will continue to uphold this exchange rate regime. Our exchange rate is generally decided by market supply and demand, and we have also leveraged the function of government to avoid major fluctuations in exchange rate. Now we have seen some depreciation of RMB, but it has not deviated from fundamentals. The PBOC has taken a host of measures to manage expectations. Our foreign exchange market is stable. Settlement and purchase of foreign exchange in the market is also commensurate with expectations. Now we do not see buyers and sellers flooding into the foreign exchange market. With sound fundamentals of China's economy and new progress in our high-quality development, China's economy will continue to improve on the whole. From the perspective of international balance of payment, China's surplus under current account has remained around 2% to GDP. Cross-border capital flow is basically balanced. In recent days, overseas investment in domestic bonds has continued a momentum of net inflow. And from the perspective of foreign exchange reserve, China has sufficient foreign exchange reserve. The outstanding reserve remains the largest in the world. That is about $3 trillion. So overall, China's RMB exchange rate regime is supported by strong foundations, and it remains at adaptive and equilibrium level. It will see two-way fluctuations, but within a proper range. Maintaining stability of foreign exchange rate is a policy goal, but also something welcomed by the people. In recent years, despite rounds of external shocks, the PBOC has gained strong experience and confidence in employing our policy tools to manage risks, and we have the conditions and capability to respond to all kinds of shocks and maintain foreign exchange market stability. We will employ the tools at our disposal according to the conditions we face. If it's needed, we will use it. If not, we will not use it. What kind of tools we will use, it would be up to the conditions on the ground. Going forward, the PBOC
在合理均衡水平上基本稳定为目标，以预期管理为核心。
will continue to follow the decisions of the Central Leadership and State Council and to keep RMB exchange rate basically stable at an adaptive and equilibrium level. We will closely monitor changes in foreign exchange market and continue to guide expectations. Of course, we will resolutely forestall major fluctuations in exchange rate, and I will ask Director General Zhou to respond to your question on real estate. About our considerations for policies and implementation, I think it's already addressed in our previous response to some questions. Well, this year, according to decisions of the Central Leadership and the State Council, we have worked to promote stable performance of the real estate market from both the supply side and demand side. And its performance has been stable in the first half. The demand was unleashed quickly, relatively, in the first quarter. And then entering into April, it became more normalized. The credit for example, about the developers' loans, this is mainly used for construction of projects. It was issued when the projects were open and repaid when the construction was finished. The outstanding loans has a direct relation with the scale of commercial housing under building. In the future, in the past, there was a clear increase in demand for developers' loans. In the first 5 months, we had more than 420 billion yuan of new developers' loans, which was 270 billion yuan more year on year. And personal housing loans was issued at an amount of 2.9 trillion yuan, which is 510 billion yuan more year on year. But this is commensurate with the new construction and sales of commercial housing in the first half of this year.
但统计数据显示的个人住房贷款余额，上半年总体还略微减少一点。
The statistics show that outstanding personal housing loans have dropped somewhat in the first half of the year. I think the main contributing factors are lowering profit rates of investment and wealth management. So some personal loan holders have chosen to use the funds at their hand to do prepayments.
尽管贷款市场报价利率下行了0.45个百分点，但因为呢，
Though the LPR has dropped by 45 basis points, but the discretional range for commercial banks to increase LPR rate or lower LPR rate remains 10 basis points. Prepayment is a big factor in affecting the commercial banks' frontline operations. We encourage those banks to discuss with the personal debtors to discuss proper ways of arranging prepayment in an orderly manner. Thank you.
Next question.
Thank you. Yi-Cai, could you share with us more details about monetary policy going forward to boost economic recovery? Are there any room for further cut of required reserve rate? And there will be new structural tools?
I believe the first question and answer have given a summary, and I will now go into the details. Generally speaking, our economy is on the path of recovery post-pandemic. On the one hand, production, distribution, circulation, and consumption is a dynamic, circular process, so it takes time, as the Deputy Governor has just mentioned. We think that it is important to have both confidence and patience. On the other hand, internal driving force is still quite weak because our economy is at a crucial stage of transition and upgrade. Real estate, infrastructure construction are seeing weakening momentum, while technological innovation, green development, and building a modern industrial system are all underway. So in the process, different market entities might have different perception of the economic prospects. This year, our prudent monetary policy has been targeted and strong, providing boost to the recovery of economic performance, as Governor Liu has elaborated on just now. In terms of the general picture, we have adopted a prudent monetary policy with ample policy tools to respond to the new challenges and changes. And going forward, we will continue to, in light of the economic situation and the market prices, step up macro regulation and take a targeted approach. We will make use of open market operations, MLF, and required reserve ratio, as well as other monetary policy tools to keep loans growing at a reasonable rate and to lower the cost of loans. We will also strengthen the guiding role of interest rates, make good use of the 200 billion in re-lending and re-discount. We will support the special purpose loan for green energy and step up support of inclusive finance for small and medium companies. We will implement well our action plan and step up technological innovation. We will continue to implement the policy of ensuring financial support for pre-sold housing units and support the smooth and sound development of the real estate sector. As for policy tools that have expired, we will continue to make good use of the outstanding funds to ensure that our support is not lessened or weakened, and when necessary, we can come up with new policy tools to provide support for the key areas and weak links in pursuing high-quality development. Thank you. In the interest of time, we will have only 2 more questions. 21st Century Business Herald. Recently, the State Council executive meeting adopted an action plan on supporting financing for technologically oriented businesses. What measures have you taken in this regard?
Now, China's economy has entered a new stage of development. Scientific and technological innovation has become an important supporter for implementing the high-quality development strategy. The PBOC and other financial regulators of China have faithfully implemented decisions of the Central Leadership and State Council and put providing financial service for scientific and technological innovation front and center. We have continued to improve our market institutions and diversify tools of financial support. We have guided other financial actors to provide financing support for those tech companies. By the end of June this year, outstanding loan for businesses with specialized, distinct, and new technologies was 2.72 trillion yuan, up by 24% year-on-year, and had remained above 20% for 14 consecutive months. The weighted average interest rate of outstanding loans for these companies have been at 4.13%, down by 39 basis points year-on-year. The outstanding loans for technology-oriented SMEs was 2.3 trillion yuan, up by 450 billion yuan compared to last year, and up by 25.3%. Going forward, the PBOC will continue to faithfully implement decisions of the Central Leadership and State Council to deepen supply-side structural reform in the financial sector and to provide more financial tools that can divert more financial resources to technology-oriented businesses. And we will focus on the following areas. Number one, we will promote capacity building for credit service for science and technology development. We will guide development and policy-backed banks to focus on their main operations and take stronger measures to provide services for science innovation strategy of the country, and we encourage commercial banks to expand loan lending to technology-oriented businesses, and will focus on building a more specialized and professional risk assessment system that can help technology-oriented businesses adapt to the needs of finance requirements. This is about indirect finance. And second, we will focus on improving direct financing through multi-layers of capital market. We'll further expand bond issuance of technology-oriented businesses to create more bond products for them. And equity financing, we will use government investment funds to support financing of these businesses, expand the sources and exit channels for them in terms of startup investment and private equity investment funds. Third, we will harness the role of insurance and finance guarantee institutions in spreading risks for those firms. We encourage relevant departments to create new models of financing guarantee services for tech firms, improve the pilot trials of insurance compensation for first application of key technology equipment or new materials, and provide a greater variety of tech insurance products to lower risks of innovation and startup. Fourth, we will strengthen external support from the financial sector for technological innovation. On the basis of safety and compliance, we support those firms in utilizing financing from international capital market, and will continue to have regular contacts with firms in terms of financing and strengthen the collection of publicly available information to promote relevant trials of financial reforms in the area of technological innovation. And fifth, we will have a holistic approach in responding to financial support for technological innovation and guard against financial risks. We will improve bond credit rating, IP value assessment, and other market-based regulations for financing of those firms to prevent blind investment and reckless investment. Thank you. Next question. Thank you for giving me the chance to raise the last question. And for our securities times, a lot has been said about real estate market. Could you share us more about the statistics in the first half of this year about financing for real estate? And could you tell us more about the issuance of loans to real estate? I think this question has been already covered by our previous answers. I not only mentioned the structure of lending in the housing market, I also said that the issuance of developers' loans was a main factor in demonstrating our support for this sector. And I also touched upon the issue of prepayment, the factor of interest rate. So issuance of lending increased significantly. At the same time, prepayment also increased notably. And the amount of outstanding loan was a key issue that many people followed. So some people who saw those numbers had pessimistic views about the future trajectory of the real estate selling. But what we want to stress is that we have to take a holistic view of all those statistics. 99% of the personal housing loan holders chose a floating interest rate. So now, many borrowers have contracts that's based on negotiation with the bank, issuing bank for their interest rate. And in fact, the LPR rate has dropped by 45 base points, and there is also an 10 base point add that is discretional for the bank and the borrower. Well, interest rate was just one factor that contributed to prepayment, the increase in prepayment. Also, the decrease in profit rate of wealth management products also contributed to this trend. That's why I said people's plans changed in terms of their own wealth management, and that contributed to their actions in arranging prepayments. We offered stronger support for the real estate market, and that was reflected by a larger number in the outstanding loans. And so I just basically summarized what the points we made in our previous answers. Thank you. That concludes our press conference today. Goodbye.